Though flooding is unwelcome right now, good rain throughout the year means the nation stands to make an extra $12 billion this year from bumper crops. The total value of those crops will be $81 billion. That's according to the Australian Bureau of Agricultural and Resources Economics and Sciences. Annette Boyd spoke with ABARES Executive Director Dr Jared Greenville and asked how sanctions on Russia will impact grain prices.
It's a pretty tragic situation that seems to be unfolding there. As you mentioned, so the Ukraine and Russia account for about 20 to 30% of wheat and barley exports that we see globally. At the moment, it's a bit uncertain as to how that will play out. Prices are already high, largely because of poor seasonal conditions in North America. Russia's also been limiting exports, and so as production globally starts to go back up into the next year, we'd expect some downward pressure on prices, but this is going to put upward pressure on prices, and the balance of those two impacts is a bit uncertain. But it would be, I guess, you'd expect the high prices that we're seeing now to linger for much longer than otherwise might be the case.
So if there are problems with exporting grain out of the Black Sea region, what does that mean for Australian wheat farmers?
So it would mean that our prices that we receive, particularly our export prices, remain pretty high. At the moment, there's a real premium for milling quality as human grade wheat, and so that would stick around for next year and into as we follow out the rest of this season as well. So that would mean higher returns, higher incomes for Australian grain producers.
Okay, so additional to this conflict in Ukraine and Russia, what are some of the implications for energy prices in Australia, and then the cost of things for farmers here like fertilisers and other input costs such as labour?
Yeah, so we've seen prices across the energy mix, particularly for fertilisers into agriculture, go up recently, and particularly for the summer crops that are being planted and growing at the moment. Last year's winter crop seemed to escape some of those high prices. That will put pressure on the margins that producers are receiving. But at the moment, the output price increases have been much higher than the input price increases. And so that, at the moment, the mix of those two is really delivering better returns overall, higher incomes for producers. That's going to, again, be tested as we go forward, and it'll be the balance of those two. But given we've got a situation of high output prices and higher input prices, that will limit some of the impacts of those.
We've had some severe rain events in the northern rivers of New South Wales and southeast Queensland leading to some pretty horrific flooding right now. What impact is that going to have on agriculture, and what are some of the key industries located in those areas that are now under floodwater?
Yeah, so we've seen those pictures of some very high levels of water flowing through those regions. At the moment, it's pretty too early to tell as to what those impacts will be. Obviously, there's going to be complete damage for those producers on river systems, and there's a few different industries that will be affected, from horticulture to dairy, and as it goes inland as well to some of the cropping regions. We'll just have to really wait and see what will happen from those. With any luck, a bit like the rainfall that we saw in November, the sector did escape from much of the worst case scenario, and we saw a lot of quality downgrades, but we saw production maintained. So there'll be a watching brief for the next little while, and as we see the water start to subdue, and farmers can get out there and actually see what damage there might have been.
And having a look through your report, agricultural commodities in Australia appear to be doing very well. What are some of the key highlights from the report that you're releasing?
Yeah, so what we've found is really that it's been a pretty remarkable year for Australian agriculture, notwithstanding all these issues that we were just discussing. So the sector's gross value of production, or the value of the sector, is reaching a record high of $81 billion, and it's well above any previous record. So last year, it also hit a record of $68 billion, and so it's jumped that by $12 billion. And that's really bringing together what has been, for this year, some pretty exceptional growing conditions across the West Coast and the East Coast. But we're also seeing 32-year highs across Australia's bundle of agricultural goods. And that's really coming together, good prices and good seasonal conditions to deliver a real high gross value of the sector.
So are Australian farmers posting profits again, and what are they doing with those profits?
Yeah, so we're seeing, farm cash incomes go up in line with this increased production and these high prices, and so we're expecting broadacre sector, that's our cropping and also the livestock sectors, the cash incomes to rise by about 34%. So that's really quite a big rise on a rise that we saw last year. Investing those profits is really going to be the important next step to set up the sector, because we know that good seasonal conditions and high prices aren't going to stick around forever.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.